Welcome back to the deep dive. If you manage land for wildlife, optimizing habitat isn't just about gut feelings, it's really about biology, strategy. You don't just want deer around, you want healthy populations, right? And you want to make sure your land is maximizing its value ecologically and maybe even economically. So today we're doing a deep dive into the source material we've gathered. Our mission? Pretty simple. Pull out the most effective, actionable things you can do, like right now, for whitetail management. And we're really zeroing in on that critical factor, food availability. We want the insights that cut through some of the usual advice.
And we really have to kick off by tackling a big myth. It's probably the most surprising thing we found in the sources. Most folks, hunters, landowners, they love that image of the big mature forest, towering trees.
Right, seems ideal.
But for whitetail nutrition, especially, in summer when they're growing, that belief is often, kind of misleading. We're going to show you why the green leaves from young forests, that new growth, are actually better, and how using that counterintuitive idea is maybe your fastest track to a healthier herd.
Okay, interesting. But before we get into the specifics, like cutting trees and planting food,
Right.
let's just quickly define what we're talking about. Habitat improvement.
The sources get a bit technical.
Yeah, they do. The definition talks about restoring, enhancing, or establishing physiographic, hydrological, or disturbance conditions.
Whoa.
Right. But what it boils down to is you, the landowner, you're actively managing the environment, often manipulating it.
Oh, so
Well, maybe through logging or controlled burns, planting things, whatever it takes to create or maintain the best conditions for the native plants and animals. It's definitely an active, ongoing thing, not just set it and forget it. Got it. So active control, manipulation to build that ideal ecosystem. Okay, let's jump into that surprise you mentioned, the forest thing. Most people, myself included sometimes, assume that huge old forest, best cover, most natural food for deer. Where does that idea go wrong?
it seems logical, sure,
Yeah.
but it kind of ignores how whitetails actually eat. A mature forest gives you two things that aren't great for deer food: height and shade.
Height and shade. Okay.
Yeah, the canopy gets thick, right? So it shades out all that important stuff growing underneath, limits the understory growth. And most of the leaves, the good stuff, it's just way too high for a deer to reach.
So it's about whether they can actually get to the food, not just if it's there somewhere. If it's 20 feet up, it doesn't do much good.
Exactly. Accessibility. That's the key insight from the sources. Young forests win because they provide those green leaves, soft mast right at eye level for the deer. When you clear cut or manage a stand to let new stuff grow, you get this explosion of saplings, shrubs, briars, all offering easy-to-reach, high-energy food.
Like setting up a buffet right where they can reach it. What about the actual quality of the food? Is young growth better nutritionally too?
It often is, yeah. It's not just reach. As trees get older, their leaves tend to get tougher. More lignin and cellulose, woody fiber they can't digest easily, and tannins, which make them bitter. But that new growth, those soft green shoots on young trees and shrubs, highly digestible, packed with nutrients, it really maximizes what the deer get during spring and summer.
And that's critical timing, right? For antler growth, for just raising fawns.
Absolutely critical. That's when they need the best fuel.
Okay, that's huge. That really changes how you should think about thinning timber. But how long does a forest stay young enough? Is this like a 10-year window or?
That's where that manipulation part comes in again.
Hmm.
The sources suggest that peak accessibility, that sweet spot, usually lasts maybe 5 to 15 years after a cut or some other disturbance.
Only 5 to 15 years.
Yeah, after that, those trees start reaching up, the canopy closes in again, and the food at deer level drops off. So, if you're managing for whitetails, you need a plan, a rotation.
Meaning you always need some part of your property to be in that young, accessible stage.
Exactly. It demands active, continuous management. You're often thinking about logging not just for the timber income, but specifically for deer access.
Right, that connects the dots for summer nutrition. But deer need food year-round. So if young forests fix the summer problem, what about the rest of the year? That brings us to food plots, doesn't it?
That's the other key piece. Food plots shift from being just, a nice bonus to almost a necessity, depending on the season. Young growth is great for summer, like we said,
Right.
but it doesn't help much in late fall or especially late winter when natural food is scarce or, buried under snow.
Okay, so food plots fill that gap in the calendar, making sure the herd doesn't hit a nutritional wall when it gets cold. What are the main advantages the sources point out?
They really do a few crucial things at once. First, the obvious. They concentrate food. Good for the animals, sure. But that concentration also makes it easier to see the animals and, improves hunting opportunities
Yeah.
for the owner or whoever leases the land.
Makes sense. Concentrated resource.
Second, and this is really important, they tackle that toughest time of year.
That winter gap you mentioned. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, the sources were really clear on this. Late winter is by far the most difficult time to give your wildlife enough food and coverage. Natural stuff is gone or locked up, so you need specific crops in those plots. Things that stay available and are still palatable, even when it's harsh out.
Like what, specifically?
Well, this is where you need to be strategic. Think brassicas like turnips, radishes. They hold up nutritionally even after hard frosts. Or maybe some perennial clovers that green up early in the spring.
So not just planting anything, but choosing crops that solve that specific late winter problem, January through March maybe.
Exactly. You got to move beyond just, say, basic ryegrass. You need species that really target that tough window.
That detail on brassicas surviving frost, that's gold for someone trying to figure this out. Okay, but you mentioned a third advantage, the financial one. That sounds pretty compelling for landowners maybe running this partly as a business.
Absolutely. This is where conservation meets practical economics. Food plots can act as a buffer. They protect your surrounding cash crops.
How does that work?
Well, if you're a farmer, say you're growing corn or soybeans or hay, stuff you sell, deer will hit those crops, especially if other food is scarce. But if you strategically place food plots nearby filled with things deer really like, you give them a better, safer, more appealing option right there.
So you're basically luring them away from the crops you need to sell. It's like a strategic diversion.
Pretty much, yeah. The source actually calls it a win-win. You're giving the deer extra food they need, improving their health, maybe antler size, while potentially saving yourself real money by stopping them from hammering your main cash crops.
That's smart.
Yeah, if you figure out the value of the crop yield you save compared to what it costs to plant the food plot, the return on investment, the ROI, can make that plot a really sound business decision, not just a wildlife project.
I really like that link. Connecting the conservation work directly to a measurable financial benefit. It changes the whole perspective, doesn't it? From just an expense to more of a calculated investment in the property. Okay, so we've got these two big tactical pillars: young forests for summer access and strategic food plots for winter and crop protection. Let's shift fully now to the landowner's view. What are the overall rewards for doing all this intense management?
Well, the sources put it nicely. They say habitat management is one of the most rewarding things you can do. And those rewards come in two flavors, really. First, there's that, internal satisfaction, knowing you're improving things for the animals, seeing a healthier herd on your land.
The feel-good part.
Yeah. And then there's the tangible reward, creating a genuinely better hunting environment, whether for yourself or for others. But tying this back to the property's value, the big thing landowners are realizing now is the potential in leasing out hunting rights. This is where all those habitat improvements we talked about, the ones good for the deer, suddenly become really good for the bank account too.
Okay, tell us more about leasing. Obviously there's income, but what else?
Leasing brings two main benefits, according to the sources. First, yes, the income stream. And land that's clearly managed for quality wildlife, meaning it has that young forest rotation, those targeted food plots, it just commands a much higher lease price than land that's just left alone.
It signals quality, basically, like proof you've invested.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It tells potential hunters you're serious and the odds of a good experience are higher. Landowners are often really surprised by the monetary return their property might actually hold, just waiting to be unlocked by good management.
So the quality of the deer, which is tied to your management, directly impacts the lease value.
Directly. Hunters will pay a premium for access, where they know the manager has put in the work on nutrition and habitat. And the second benefit is property security, which is huge for many landowners.
How does leasing help with security?
Well, when you lease to responsible hunters, they effectively become extra eyes and ears on your property. They have a vested interest, a financial one, even in keeping the place secure.
Ah, because they want to protect their hunting spot.
Right. They're more likely to deter trespassers, report if a fence is down, notice anything unusual. It's like built-in security that comes along with the income.
That's a really powerful combination, income and security. So the landowner isn't just, spending on conservation as a cost. They're actually building a more valuable, more secure asset.
Precisely. Every dollar you spend planting those special brassicas for winter could potentially bring back much more in lease fees, and save you headaches dealing with trespassing or property damage later. It really meshes the commerce and conservation goals.
It seems like transparency would be key there, too, if you're trying to lease the land.
Absolutely. When you're negotiating a lease,
Mhm.
being able to show the work, here are the maps of our forest rotation, here are the soil tests for the food plots, here's what we plant, and why that documentation makes a huge difference. It proves the quality and justifies a premium price.
Okay, let's wrap this up for you, the listener, who's looking for those key takeaways, the things to do now. Our deep dive really highlights two crucial high-impact actions for improving your hunting habitat. First, focus on accessible food from young forest growth. Don't get too attached to only having huge, mature trees. You need to actively manage for that cycle of new growth, maybe through cutting or thinning, so deer always have that ground level browse, especially in summer. And second, use strategic food plots. Plant those specialized winter hardy crops like the brassicas we mentioned. It's good for the deer in that critical late winter period, and it creates that economic win by helping protect your valuable cash crops nearby.
Right. We spent this time looking at how doing specific work on the habitat helps the wildlife, definitely. But also, critically, how it boosts the financial side of your property, bringing in potential income and adding that layer of security through leasing. And that brings up a really interesting question for you to think about as you plan your own management work. Given that these habitat improvements are now so closely linked to monetary return and lease values, how does that financial incentive potentially shape your long-term priorities? Is the main driver ultimately conservation, or is it commerce? And maybe the bigger question, can those two things truly coexist smoothly forever, especially if financial pressures start to build? Something to mull over as you think about that next timber cut or what seed mix to put in the ground. Where does your balance point lie?